Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome from wherever you're joining us from. I'm Ryan and I'm a guide for the Central Park Conservancy. Welcome to Central Park. The Central Park Conservancy is the nonprofit who takes care of Central Park. We take care of the park year-round, keeping it clean and green. Because getting to Central Park is not an option for so many right now, we here at the Conservancy wanted to bring the park to you. We encourage you to join us every Wednesday at 12:30 for a virtual lunchtime stroll. Today we'll be exploring the Dean landscape in Central Park. We'll be together for about 15 minutes, and all the photos you're about to see were taken by myself within the past week. Before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. All participants on this tour are muted, but you can use the chat feature, which you'll see on the left-hand side, to say hello and comment. If you have a question, try using the Q&A feature, which you'll see in the middle box on the screen, and my colleagues Ian and Jose will be answering questions along the way as we go. If for some reason my connection or sound gets interrupted during our walk, just bear with me. I'll reconnect and we'll continue our walk. All right, now let's begin our walk into the Dean landscape. This is an older Greensward map rendering of the Dean landscape. The Dean was an original concept within Central Park, but over time it's changed up a little bit. Presently today, the Dean is located near the Central Park Zoo, the Woolman Skating Rink, the Dairy Visitor Center, and the Mall and Bethesda Terrace area of Central Park. This is a map that is showing our route for today's walk through the Dean landscape. We're going to be beginning our tour just north of the Central Park Zoo. The Dean landscape runs between about 65th Street up until about 69th Street in the southeastern portion of Central Park. So we're going to jump right into our walk starting just north of the Central Park Zoo. And we're going to begin right in front of the Honey Bear statue. This is a beautiful bronze sculpture which was installed in 1937. It's by the sculptor Frederick Roth. Frederick Roth sculpted a lot of wonderful animal sculptures. We're going to see arguably his most famous a little bit later on today's tour. But this beautiful honey bear sculpture is a great spot to start. And you can see the little water features just shooting off on the bottom of this honey bear sculpture. Just opposite of Honey Bear, we're going to have the Dean's Mouth Arch. Dean's Mouth Arch is a beautiful original archway created in 1859 to 1860 in the early days of Central Park's creation. This is one of the 4 transverse roads of Central Park. An original requirement was to have roads allowing traffic to pass through Central Park. 4 of these roads were created, and this is going to be the southernmost transverse road that we're going to be seeing around 65th Street. This Dean's Mouth Arch allows taxis and buses, today's modern time, to speed throughout the park without us even noticing that they're there. And that's because of this great design, which takes these buses and cars either below us or in this case, above us. Dean's Mouth is actually translated to Valley's Mouth because Dean is just a Scottish word for valley. So coming through the Valley's Mouth Arch, we'll start to be greeted by the lush green of Dean. But before we do, we're going to pass by the Tisch Children's Zoo. The Tisch Children's Zoo is a great portion of Central Park Zoo for smaller children. Here you have animal feeding, you have animal petting, and you can see Manhattan's only cow, as their website puts it. At the front of the Tisch Children's Zoo, you'll see the beautiful Lehman gates created by Paul Manship. These gates were actually recently restored in June of 2018 by the Central Park Conservancy. We do just about all of the restoration work in the park that you're going to see for all of the statues, landscapes, and even trees. We care for just about everything in the park here at the Conservancy. As we continue down, we're going to be coming straight into the Dean or the Valley. Very lush green on both sides. And as we continue up the path, we're greeted by one of Central Park's more unique features, a giant outcropping of Manhattan mica schist. Manhattan mica schist is the bedrock of New York City and Manhattan. It's actually where Manhattan got its name from. Mannahatta is a Native American term which means Isle of Many Hills. It's easy to see these giant hills as you walk through Central Park and see some of the untamed nature. This rock is really amazing and a fun feature to climb and explore in the park. If we look a little bit closer, we can see the grooves and striations. And this rock was actually carved out by a glacier dragging other rocks through this area a long, long time ago, creating these nice pockets. Different patches of granite and other stones can be found in here as well. These rocks are over 500 million years old, so they're going to be the oldest thing you'll find in Central Park. We jump just opposite of this large rock. We're going to come into a really magnificent landscape within the Dean. It's called the Dean Slope. The Dean Slope is a 1.25 acre native meadow. It's going to have wonderful native flowers. It's going to be the largest meadow of its type in Central Park. This was completed in 2017. This area was really run down, and the park used to have these classic meadow areas, but many were lost over time. As we start to go into the Dean, we can see some of the beautiful lush green. It takes about 3 to 5 seasons for a native meadow to really flower and come in. So about 3 years later, we're starting to see some grateful effects. And one of the reasons this area looks so great is because of the help we have, the volunteers of the Central Park Conservancy. Different green teams and gardening teams come in here and help make sure this area looks lush and beautiful. And these different types of native meadows are really important for native wildlife. May not look like a whole lot is going on, but there's plenty of life just here in the green. One of the important things to do when we come into these areas is to, one, make sure we have any dogs we're bringing with us on leash, and two, make sure we stay on the paths, because although it looks just green, once we look a little bit closer, we can see a lot of life starting to unfold. See those little red things that I'm seeing in the middle of the screen? If we zoom in a little bit closer, we can see those are actually strawberries. Wild strawberries grow within the Dean Slope and throughout Central Park. But don't eat these strawberries. These are going to be a great snack for a lot of the migratory birds, insects, and other wildlife that call Central Park home. Just a little over to the left of that strawberry, I see a beautiful native flower, yarrow. This yarrow is going to be one of the many wildflowers grown throughout the Dean, and it looks like we have 2 visitors on this yarrow. In the middle and to the right, you'll notice 2 types of pollinators. I'm not sure what those yellow and black type of beetles or insects are, but there's plenty of discoveries to be had within the Dean Slope and the Dean area as a whole. Looking just a little to the left of this yarrow, we have another little visitor. It's great to look at the small things because you might overlook some of this small beauty that exists throughout Central Park. This little grasshopper is no longer than your pinky nail, but all within about 1 foot of an area in the Dean Slope, we saw all of these different flowers, insects, and life. As we continue up, we're still in Central Park. We did not get transported to a desert. Believe it or not, prickly pear cacti are actually indigenous and native to New York. These cacti can be found throughout Central Park in different areas of New York, and we came during a perfect time to the Dean landscape because these cacti are starting to flower. Those prickly pear look absolutely beautiful, and those yellow flowers are radiant. Good time to stop by this landscape. And as we continue up, we're coming to arguably my favorite spot to sit in the Dean Slope. This is one of the many rustic benches you can find throughout Central Park. These rustic benches are created by the Central Park Conservancy's crafts team. They make these structures in-house, and they provide a beautiful complement to these natural landscapes and give us excellent areas to enjoy the park from. Here's the view we get from this beautiful bench, looking over that rock we just saw a little bit closer earlier on today's walk, and over towards an area we're going to be making our way to in a little bit. There's actually another piece of rustic architecture off in the distance, but we'll keep that a surprise and see what that is in a little bit. One thing I really love within the Dean Slope is the floor. The southwestern or more back portion of the Dean Slope actually has this outdoor carpet, as we like to call it. This outdoor carpet is really simple, but really amazing. It's wood chips that are bonded together by an eco-friendly adhesive or a binder that keeps them together. Once these are together, they're flattened out, and this allows water to drain through it. It prevents erosion in the soil from going everywhere when it rains, and it also keeps it accessible for people that are more limited in access, like somebody in a wheelchair or somebody with a stroller. This is actually accessible enough where people in wheelchairs can come out onto this material and hike to an area you might have never thought you'd make it to. So really amazing access. If you've taken one of our weekly walks in the Northwoods, the Ramble, the Howlett Nature Sanctuary, you may have seen some of this material before. but it's a great type of material that's coming out throughout Central Park. As we walk up this bonded carpet path, we're going to come to one of my favorite trees I have to point out within the Dean Slope rather. This is a southern magnolia, and although it's not native, it is a beautiful tree to see here. This has big oval-shaped waxy green leaves. And to kind of put in perspective how big that leaf is, here's a picture with my hand, and my hand is pretty big. So this doesn't really do it too much justice. But what is produced from this beautiful magnolia tree during a short time of the year are these big, beautiful flowers. Each one of those petals is a little bit bigger than that leaf I was just holding. And many trees throughout Central Park only bloom for a finite time. So it's really cool to come during the few weeks or maybe a few days of the year where we're going to be able to see this beautiful bloom. A really excellent tree to see, and again, great time to be walking through this landscape. As we continue down, we're almost out of the Dean Slope area, and we're going to start wrapping around the more handicap accessible path. This is the pathway into the Dean Slope just near the East Side Drive, and it's a great way to come if you have a stroller or wheelchair. As we come out of this side, we're going to take a right and walk around these meandering paths, which are great because as we walk through the park, you'll notice we can't see where we're walking to. Around every bend, there's another twist that hides what we're walking to. But as we're walking by, we see beautiful different things like this serviceberry or shadbush. Serviceberries can be found throughout the park, and they just so happen to be blooming right now, giving a nice little fruit available for different birds and animals like chipmunks and squirrels to eat, as well as adding some nice color as we walk through the park. Coming down the stairs, we've walked to a very familiar face, I'm sure. This is Balto. Balto became very famous in 1925. He is a Siberian Husky and sled dog, and he became famous for the Great Sarum Run of 1925. When a diphtheria outbreak arose in Nome, Alaska, Balto and a sled dog team, along with many other sled dog teams, created this big, long journey to bring serum to this almost unreachable place within Alaska, saving many, many lives and really capturing the hearts of many Americans. This story was broadcast on the radio, and many people tuned in to Balto and all these other sled dogs' journey. Once Balto's team arrived on the last leg of the journey with Balto right in front, arriving into Nome, Alaska, he was instantly captured and instantly sent to the front, instantly skyrocket into fame. Sorry about that. Balto became really famous from all this exposure. And the same year in 1925 in December, this statue was unveiled of Balto here in Central Park. One of the most amazing things about this statue is that Balto was actually here during the unveiling. He's actually the only figure in Central Park to have a statue that was there during the unveiling. And this piece was sculpted by none other than Frederick Roth, the man we saw who sculpted the honey bear earlier in today's walk. The cool thing to see is how Balto's bronze is kind of different color. And the reason being, this is one of those statues that it encourages interaction. It's actually placed on a rock of Manhattan mica schist, like we saw before, and encourages you to climb up and pet, or maybe sit on Balto's back and take a picture. All those shinier areas of the bronze come from all of our hands touching and petting Balto and kind of shining him up a bit with our palm oil. Really cool statue that we take care of because of all the attention it receives. But a great, great piece of history here in Central Park. Just behind Balto, you see a really cool different archway. Unlike the Dean's Mouth arch that we saw before, Willowdell Arch here is going to be used for a different purpose. Dean's Mouth was to take cars and traffic through the park. This was actually originally created to take horse-drawn carriages overhead while you can safely walk underneath. Today, it sees more bicyclists and runners with the occasional horse-drawn carriage on top, but it serves the same purpose. These bridges and arches allow us to travel from 59th Street all the way to 110th Street, a full 2.5 miles, without ever having to worry about getting run over by a horse-drawn carriage, bicyclist, or a runner. These are great additions to Central Park. And a closer look shows my favorite detail. This sandstone and red brick archway has some beautiful decoration in the sandstone. My favorite feature of Willowdell Arch. As we turn around and start heading back, we're going to come up to our last stop or two, and we're going to walk more towards the east side around 67th Street. As we start coming up, we're noticing something to the left just beyond those little yellow and blue plants. We're going to come to a kid's paradise, Billy Johnson's Playground. Billy Johnson Playground is one of 21 playgrounds found in Central Park. And this is one that actually recently went through a major restoration project opening in November of 2018. This area received a lot of care, getting new wood features, getting new sand equipment, and getting a lot of decoration. A lot of it looking like a miniature Central Park. You can find a miniature gap-style bridge and a couple other cool pieces of architecture within there. All of these playgrounds have a different theme and cater to different age groups with different equipment. But all of them are certainly loved by the kids of New York. And playgrounds at Central Park are now open. So parents, bring your kids to the park and get out to one of the 21 different playgrounds that you can find throughout Central Park. As we continue back a little bit, we're going to start heading just up the path toward the north in the Dean. We're going to head to the top of that rock so we can get a little bit better of a view. So we'll start making our way just uphill and take this path on the right. As we're walking up, we see some really cool Manhattan mica schist carved steps. These steps are literally carved out of the rock that we're seeing just behind it. A really cool addition that makes you feel so connected to the natural geology of the park. And as we walk up, we can't really see where we're going to because the path still meanders and curves, but we do pass by a beautiful little orange lily. This is a perennial plant. A perennial will bloom up just about every year. It'll die off or seemingly die off and then pop up the next year and really give you a nice little surprise and treat. But these types of plants can be found throughout the park. And once we come up around this lily, we get to see what we're walking towards. The Dean Summer House, a beautiful wooden cottage nestled on top of this really big old rock of Manhattan mica schist and covered in a beautiful wisteria vine. As we walk just inside, we can see the beautiful views and places to sit that this offers. These summer houses, again, are created by Conservancy's crafts team, and they're just incredible areas with incredible views. One of my favorite parts are the ceilings and the symmetry this provides. These are made out of black locust, which is a tree you can find growing in Central Park. Black locust is a really hardy, rot-resistant tree, and it can last about 10 years or so before needing replacement. These amazing summer houses were original to the park, and many were lost over time and not replaced. But here at the Conservancy, we've working hard to replace and restore a lot of these and make sure they're tip-top for people to enjoy for many years to come. You can find other summer houses like these in areas like the Ramble, but this beautiful Dean Summer House is certainly one of my favorites. So as we start to exit this summer house, we are coming to the end of our walk, but let's take one more beautiful view over the landscape we just explored before we end our walk. So coming out of this Dean Summer House, we're going to come up onto that rock and look out what we just explored, taking in the beauty just one more time. Certainly one of my favorite areas to walk around in this landscape of Central Park. But we'll enjoy that beautiful view, and this will bring us to the end of our walk. I want to thank everybody for visiting, and I hope you enjoyed our little tour of the Dean landscape in Central Park. If you'd like to stay connected, we have plenty of resources available online where you can find more information. You can find learning materials for kids. You can find more weekly walks and plenty of other stuff on centralparknyc.org. You may also share your own Central Park stories using the hashtag #MyCentralPark. We'll be back again next Wednesday with another weekly walk, and we encourage you to join us. I'll keep the program going for a few minutes to allow anyone to ask my colleagues a few more questions. But otherwise, I would like to say from all of us here at the Conservancy, stay safe and be well.